There was a time when Earth did not belong to just one kind of human. If you walked across the planet 40 or 50,000 years ago, you might have found people who looked almost like us, but not exactly. Some were shorter and stronger. Some had heavy brows and powerful bodies built for cold. Some lived on islands and evolved into something almost unbelievable. Some are so mysterious that we know them more from DNA than from faces. And then there was us, Homo sapiens. Today, we are the only human species left. Not the strongest, not the oldest, not the one that survived the longest, just the last one standing. Which raises a disturbing question. What happened to everyone else? Because for most of human history, being human was not one thing. It was a family, a messy, branching, experimental family. Evolution did not make humans once. It kept trying. Different bodies, different brains, different tools, different ways of surviving the same dangerous planet. But one by one, the other branches disappeared. And the strange part is that we still do not know the full reason why. There was no single moment when the world simply chose Homo sapiens. No single battle, no single disaster, no clean ending. Instead, the story looks more like a slow disappearance. Small populations breaking apart, climate changing faster than bodies could adapt, food disappearing, new competitors arriving, groups mixing, groups dying, and sometimes, maybe plain bad luck. The first human species you have to understand is Homo erectus. And Homo erectus was not some failed experiment. In some ways, they were one of the most successful humans who ever lived. They appeared long before us, around 2 million years ago. They had bodies that looked much more modern than earlier human relatives. Long legs, shorter arms, a body built for walking and running across open land. They were likely among the first humans to spread far beyond Africa, reaching parts of Asia and surviving for an almost ridiculous amount of time. Longer than Homo sapiens has existed. Much longer. If our species feels permanent, Homo erectus should make us nervous, because they lasted for well over 1 million years, and still vanished. Their faces were not like ours. They had a low skull, a strong brow ridge, a smaller brain than modern humans, but much larger than earlier ape-like ancestors. They made stone tools. They hunted and scavenged. They lived in changing environments across huge distances. And for a very long time that was enough. But the last known Homo erectus fossils come from Gandong, on the island of Java. The best current dating places them around 117,000 to 108,000 years ago. By then, the world had changed. Other human species existed. Climate was unstable. Forests expanded and retreated. Rivers shifted. Animals moved. And Homo erectus, after surviving for an almost impossible stretch of time, finally disappeared. We do not know exactly why. Maybe their remaining populations became isolated. Maybe they could not adapt fast enough to changing environments. Maybe newer humans outcompeted them. But their extinction teaches one lesson early. Surviving for a long time does not mean surviving forever. Then there were the Neanderthals, the human species people think they know. For a long time, they were treated like brutish cave people, slow, primitive, half-human. That image is wrong. Neanderthals were not failed humans. They were a different answer to the same problem. How do you survive the Ice Age? Their bodies were powerful, shorter and stockier than ours, with wide chests, strong arms, and thick bone. Their faces had large noses, heavy brow ridges, and long, low skulls. They were built for cold environments where bodies lost heat quickly and food could be hard to find. They hunted large animals at close range, a dangerous way to live. Their injuries sometimes look like the injuries of modern rodeo riders, the kind you get from coming too close to powerful animals. They used fire. They made tools. They likely cared for injured group members. They may have used pigments and ornaments. They were not monsters in the dark. They were people of another kind. And for hundreds of thousands of years, they survived. Then Homo sapiens began moving into their world. And after around 40,000 years ago, the physical evidence of Neanderthals disappears. Biologically, as a living human species, they were gone. But the question is why? The old answer was simple. We arrived, we were smarter, we destroyed them. But the real answer is probably not that clean. Neanderthals lived in small, scattered populations. That is dangerous. Small groups can vanish from ordinary disasters. A bad winter, a failed hunt, a disease, a birth rate slightly too low for too long. Ancient DNA suggests some late Neanderthal groups had low genetic diversity, meaning they may have already been vulnerable before Homo sapiens became a serious factor. Climate also kept shifting. Cold phases, warmer phases, changing animals, changing plants, changing landscapes. Imagine trying to survive when the world you understand keeps rearranging itself. Then add another human species entering the same territories. A species with wider social networks, long-distance exchange, possibly faster innovation, maybe better ways of connecting groups across space. Not necessarily stronger, not necessarily better in every way, but more flexible in the one way that mattered. When Neanderthals disappeared, it may not have been because they lost one great war. It may have been because they lost 1,000 small battles against isolation, climate, competition, and time. Then there are the Denisovans. And Denisovans are strange because they are almost like ghosts. For Neanderthals, we have skulls, bones, tools, burials. For Denisovans, the story began with a tiny finger bone found in a Siberian cave. A fragment so small it did not look like it could rewrite human history. But DNA showed it belonged to a previously unknown human group, not Neanderthal, not Homo sapiens, something else. Denisovans may have lived across a huge part of Asia, Siberia, the Tibetan Plateau, possibly Southeast Asia, but their fossil record is frustratingly small. A finger bone, teeth, jaw fragments, a few rare remains. For years, we did not even really know what their faces looked like, and yet their genetic shadow is enormous. Some modern populations in Oceania and parts of Asia carry Denisovan ancestry. Tibetans inherited a version of a gene linked to high-altitude survival from Denisovan-related humans. That is one of the strangest facts in human evolution. A vanished human group may still help living people breathe in thin mountain air, but as a living population, Denisovans also disappeared. The youngest known Denisovan fossil evidence is around 40,000 years old. Some genetic evidence suggests certain groups may have survived until around 30,000 years ago. After that, they fade out. Why? We do not know. Their range may have been wide, but their populations may have been thin. They may have been absorbed into incoming Homo sapiens groups in some places. They may have been outnumbered in others. Climate shifts may have broken their habitats apart, and because we still have so few fossils, their extinction remains one of the foggiest chapters in the human story. The Denisovans remind us of something uncomfortable. A human species can disappear so completely that almost nothing is left but fragments and code. Not cities, not monuments, not stories, just DNA. Then there is Homo floresiensis, the strangest one in this video. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, scientists found the remains of a tiny ancient human. So small, they were nicknamed hobbits. They stood around a meter tall, they had small brains, small bodies, but they made tools and survived on an island full of giant birds, Komodo dragons, and dwarf elephants called stegodon. At first, people could barely believe they were real. Were they diseased modern humans? Were they some strange abnormal population? But the evidence pointed to something more astonishing. They were a separate human species, a small island human, and islands do strange things to evolution. Large animals can shrink, small animals can grow. Predators and prey change size because island ecosystems have different rules. This is called island dwarfism, and Homo floresiensis may be one of the most dramatic examples in the human family. Their fossils at Liangbua are now dated roughly between 100,000 and 60,000 years ago. Stone tools associated with them go as late as around 50,000 years ago. That date is haunting because modern humans were moving through the region around that general time, and then Homo floresiensis vanished. Again, we do not know exactly why. Maybe climate changed the island environment. Maybe their prey declined. Maybe volcanic activity disrupted the ecosystem. Maybe Homo sapiens arrived and added pressure. On a small island, you do not need a global catastrophe. A small population can be erased by a chain of local problems. Less water, less prey, more competition, one eruption, one bad stretch of generations, and an entire human species can be gone. That is what makes Homo floresiensis so unsettling. They were not competing for the whole planet. They were just trying to survive one island, and even that was not safe. So why did Homo sapiens survive when the others did not? This is where the answer becomes dangerous if we make it too simple. It is tempting to say we were smarter, but Neanderthals were intelligent. Denisovans adapted to extreme environments. Homo erectus survived longer than we have. Homo floresiensis survived in a world that would terrify modern people. So the answer cannot just be intelligence. It may have been connection. Homo sapiens seem to have been unusually good at forming large social networks. Not just families, not just small bands. Wider webs of people, tools, ideas, and information. If one group failed, another could carry knowledge forward. If one region became harsh, people could move. If one tool worked, it could spread. If one idea helped, it did not have to stay trapped in one valley. That may be one of our greatest advantages. Not the individual brain alone, the network between brains. Other human species may have had culture, but Homo sapiens may have built culture that traveled farther, changed faster, and connected more people. And when the planet became unstable, that mattered. A connected species can absorb shocks that isolated groups cannot. But even that does not make us destined winners. Luck mattered too. Geography mattered. Timing mattered. Population size mattered. Maybe Homo sapiens survived partly because we were adaptable, and partly because we happened to be in the right places with the right numbers at the right moments. The other humans were not stepping stones to us. They were not unfinished versions of us. They were their own experiments, their own histories, their own ways of being human, and now they are gone. Homo erectus after more than 1 million years, Neanderthals after surviving the Ice Age world, Denisovans, leaving behind only rare bones and genetic clues, Homo floresiensis, the tiny island humans who vanished near the edge of our own arrival. Today, when we say human, we mean Homo sapiens, but that is only because every other meaning disappeared. We are not the peak of a ladder. We are the last branch of a tree that used to have many living branches. And maybe that should make us feel less superior, not more. Because if the other humans teach us anything, it is this. Extinction does not only happen to the weak, it happens to the isolated, the unlucky, the specialized, the outnumbered, the ones living through changes too fast to survive. And one day, if we are not careful, the last human species could learn the same lesson.